Good morning, everybody, and welcome to our April 21st edition of Talk Tuesday. My name is Dahlia Assam. I'm a colleague of Caroline's here at EdAdvance. If we can move to the next slide, please. I just wanted to thank everybody that makes these Talk Tuesday sessions happen. Our colleagues at the state, we have Carli, and we have a special presentation from Jay Brown today as well. Thank all my team at EdAdvance. We have our Director of Marketing and Communications on to help us out today, the lovely Devana, and thank you, Dan, for all things back end. Welcome to our welcome Bridgeport, our second presenters today. And if you could kindly put your name and your role in the chat today, we'll go ahead and get started. All right, next slide, please. So just some highlights and happenings. There's still registration open for our student support series. There are 2 more sessions which are located on this slide. There's also a link to register for the remaining sessions. We can move to the next slide, please. So the attendance awareness campaign through Attendance Works is still on. They still have, I believe, 3 more sessions. The May 13th session seems particularly interesting and timely. It's about engaging and building bridges and keeping connections to families during the summer. Those links are also available on there, and you can register through our slideshow, which will be shared. Next slide, please. Friday Cafe is open. Again, save the date for May 15th. The link as well is on the slide there. There is also, I'm seeing a free tour for an admission to Mystic Aquarium. So at your disposal, you can go ahead and register for that cafe, that professional network for community and family engagement. Let's go ahead and move to the next slide. So just a reminder from our past sessions as well, the CT home visit and the trainings are continuing to be facilitated through CREC. Their next training is on May 13th, 2026. And just a reminder that you do not need to be a LEAP district in order to register for that training. It's a wonderful training and open to all. Can we move to the next slide, please? All right, so our colleague and friend Carli at the state shared a wonderful article from the American Enterprise Institute. They shared an interesting study on varsity athletes in Indiana. They merged day-level attendance data with with their rosters for varsity athletes for around 262,000 Indiana high school students in 23 and in the 23-24 year. And their findings were that they found a consistent, what they called a double bump in attendance for athletes. So varsity athletes had better attendance than most other students, both out of season, and they still had better attendance during their sports season. So some of the findings in this study were important just to demonstrate that chronic absenteeism is far lower among varsity athletes, and this differential from other students remains large, even when they controlled for many other factors. Can we move to the next slide, please? So here is another article that was shared as well that merged the previous article from EdWeek. And some of the important things just to keep in mind is that there's still a growing body of research that shows that kids who participate in either sports clubs or social interest clubs or any other extracurricular activities continue to feel a sense of belonging at school, and they're more likely to show up consistently than other groups. The other interesting finding here is that they show that older students will find a way to get to school despite obstacles often cited as barriers to attendance, such as transportation challenges, if they have an incentive to do so. And I see Carli here has shared the article, and I know she had some insights for you.
I just had something I wanted to add, something for you to think about over the summer and consider taking a look at all of your extracurricular activities, your clubs, your sports, your all of the things you're offering for your kids and making sure they match the interests of your student population. As our student populations change, their interests might change. And it may not make sense to keep offering the same every year. It may make sense to say, hey, we have a certain group of students from this area and we know that they love, let's say, dominoes. Maybe we should consider a domino club. So really take some time and intentionally look at the offerings and look at the students who are chronically absent and what would be of interest to them and make that alignment. Thank you.
Great. Thank you, Carly. Kari, sorry. So it's some great insight and interesting that secondary students tend to show agency and will show up when they do have an interest club that really matches their interest. Let's move to the next slide, please. All right, this is Kari.
This is me. I'm sorry the numbers are so small, but because we have infamous Jay Brown with us today for his presentation, and we're going to be talking about all things that have to do with IDEA, IEPs, BPTs, and just wanted to take a minute to demonstrate looking at your data on EdSite on the attendance dashboard. This is data that I downloaded and I dumped it into AI and asked it to analyze it for me and then double checked it, of course, by type of disability. And just take a minute and look at that. And in the chat, tell me if there's anything that surprises you. Is it look like this at your district? Have you done this at your district? And think about it that way for just a minute. And you can always just put that in the chat. That's right, Sharon. Thank you, Sharon, for, of course, pointing out that emotional disability is our highest level of students with chronic absence. Our students with disabilities as a whole, as a group, is among our highest groups with chronic absence rates. And if we don't resolve and those issues and help those support those students coming to school, we're not going to get our chronic absence rates down to where we want to go. With 65% of our students with emotional disability, we know those students, some of it might be discipline, some of it might be suspensions, out of school suspensions. But I was thinking, and just wanted to share with you some ideas of looking at where are the disabilities in your district that are the highest, and think about that population of students, sort of like Gemma was talking about a couple of weeks ago, baskets, putting the different disabilities in baskets and thinking, what can we do for kids who have, what's another really high one I was looking at, the multiple disabilities or other disabilities, and think about what can we do for those students and try and make a difference. So I did that with the emotional disability. If you go to the next slide, please. And I prepared sort of a little bit of some guidance around supporting students with emotional disability. This isn't research-based. This is just informal things to think about for students with emotional disability to improve their attendance. Some of the things that are so important are consistent relationships, predictable routines, emotional safety, meaningful engagement, and collaborative family partnerships. And when I say collaborative, I mean with families, bringing them in to help problem solve together, to put our minds together and solve some issues, and not in a punitive way that is about compliance. Be their partners in these issues because they also want the best for their students. And so I will share the PDF I created with this. Yes, the massive challenge, Leah, thank you, for students staying home due to anxiety. The longer students stay home, the harder it is to get them back to school. And so that's why we have to stay in front of this and watch their chronic absence rates. If they're at 7, 8%, we need to be worried about them. Don't wait for them to get to 10 to 15% because you might not be able to bring them back. So strengthen relationships and predictability, like make sure they have a consistent adult for daily or weekly check-ins, create structured arrival times, that there's a greeting station, safe space, a visual schedule, use re-entry meetings. I love this. Caroline had a handout for this about what to do when students have missed too much school and you're bringing them back to school to reduce that anxiety. Don't just expect them to walk back in the door and be like, I'm good to go. Let's go. Provide ongoing positive communication loops. Many of us are doing texts with families, and personalized, individualized texts with families can be really helpful. Implement tier 2 attendance supports. Of course, we're always happy to support the learner engagement attendance program home visits. You'll hear a little bit more about that from Mr. Bell when he comes on later from Bridgeport. Check in, check out is excellent. Mentoring. The third one was build emotional regulation capacity. This helps to reduce school avoidance. So class or designated spaces, scheduled regulation breaks before difficult classes or transitions. Staff, of course, we're doing a lot of this training in co-regulation and de-escalation. And then behavior support plans include early warning signs and coping routines. Increase engagement through strength-based learning. Academic frustration can drive the avoidance. So know when you see students who are slipping in class and getting frustrated, offer them choices in tasks, projects, or their seating. Use strength-based feedback to highlight progress. Chunk their tasks to reduce the overwhelm, and add movement or hands-on activities to improve focus and buy-in. Don't have them just sit and listen and feel like they're just getting further behind. Create a strong sense of belonging. So belonging is a protective factor for students with emotional disabilities. So a lot of schools have advisory homeroom to build connection, use community circles or structured peer activities, offer those extracurricular activities that are of interest to them, that may be something new to your school, but you may have a population who's of interest in that. Strengthen family partnerships, frequent positive contact, home visits, collaborative problem solving. I mentioned that earlier. I'm going to go through this quickly, but I'm going to put my document in the chat that has a lot of this information for you. And I know a lot of this is really logical and common sense, and we know it, but to really intentionally, maybe as a team, a school attendance team, sit down and go through this list and say, can we be doing more of this? Or maybe we hadn't thought of that. So integrate attendance into IEP practice. So add attendance-related functional goals, morning routines, and transitions. Strategically schedule counseling minutes during hardest attendance times. And also, when you're scheduling counseling for students, ensure that their classroom teacher at that point in time during the day is aware of that. So when they get called out of the class, they know that this is important too, and to negotiate so that the student isn't the negotiator in their leaving the classroom, and that there's an understanding that with the classroom teacher that the student has counseling at this time. I've heard in district attendance teams that can be a rub sometimes, that the teachers don't want them to leave because they're teaching, but help them manage that. And monitor attendance data monthly at IEP meetings. And align behavior supports with attendance plans. So address logistics and transitions. That can be the most stressful time for students. Just walking in the door of a high school when everybody else is getting there can be really, what would they call it? Overload, right? Can be sensory overload for a lot of students or adults. So have flexible arrival windows or soft starts where they can start maybe a little bit later or a little bit earlier than the other students. Backup transportation plans, visual schedules updated daily. and additional adult support during challenging transitions. So know who these students are. If you go into EdSite Secure, you can download a list of students who are have the most absences, and you can look at those students and put them in sort of like New Haven does, like baskets, and say, what can we do for this group of kids that might help a lot of them, right? And work smarter that way. So that I wanted to share that with you today. And then the next slide is an FAQ. And a funny thing is when we're doing our getting things accessible for the internet, you can't put FAQ because phonetically that doesn't sound good. So I can't put FAQ on my slides anymore. So attendance reporting for students in APSEPs, right? The approved private. Who gets their attendance? Who reports it? Where is it collected? So the who reports attendance is the sending district, and how it works is the district contracts with APSEPs, sorry, Jay, I'm not saying it right, to for the student to attend their program or school. And then the APSEPs are required to provide the daily attendance for each student in their sending district. So they send it back to the district. The district sends it to the State Department of Education for their monthly attendance collection and for their June collection. And those students' attendance is counted in the sending district's attendance and chronic absence rates. And so it's really important that you be working with your APSEPs, whoever is the liaison, the contact, and making sure that the chronic absence, that they're paying attention to student chronic absence rates. Any questions about that? I haven't been monitoring the chat. Is there anything
I think there was a comment about your students with the emotional
abilities?
I think about social anxiety, whether that was tagged as social anxiety, and there was another comment about how to engage their parents who may.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Not counting students in the hospital.
It's all through relationships. It's before the students have too many absences, you need to be working with those students, because if it's a student's had good attendance over the last couple of years and all of a sudden they're starting to drop off on attendance, something's going on. It's somebody called it the canary in the coal mine, that if a change in behaviors or attendance happens, then you need to have a meeting with the family to find out what's happening. How can you support them? Assign a home visitor to reach out to the family, and not just talk about attendance. Of course, that might come up, but talk about how can we help and what's going on. And many times the families are as frustrated as the school is about sending their child to attendance to school. I saw the flip side of that. Sometimes the families are taking them home, right, or keeping them home, or vacations and those kinds of things. And that has to do with messaging and awareness, helping parents understand the impact of keeping their child home, and that it's not going to happen in one time sitting down with them. It's going to happen over time, and starting with them when their families, when they're very little, when the kindergartners are coming in, and when the kindergartners are coming in. And that summer, I know a lot of our LEAP districts target home visits to our new kindergarten families, especially the ones who don't have older siblings, right? And this is their first time working with the school district. And I saw another question in the chat. Let's see. No, we have not given any thought to not counting the days when students are hospitalized when calculating chronic absenteeism. So let's go back to the genesis of what chronic absenteeism. It's lost time of learning, no matter what the reason. They'll be excused from absence. They can get take-home packets. They can get, sometimes in their hospital setting, they can be getting some academic supports, but the measure of chronic absence isn't measure that now you're a bad kid because you missed so much school. It's a measure how much time you've missed from learning, and that is a signal. That is a data point that you can use when you're looking at your assessment scores and saying, why are our assessment scores? Oh, well, look, in this class, in this grade, this many kids were chronically absent. What's going on there? We need to target supports there. I hope that's helpful. But as of right now, we're counting every day missed from school towards chronic absence, not towards truancy. Truancy's unexcused absences. Districts are not being penalized for something that's out of their control because in Connecticut we do not withhold funding or anything like that for chronic absence. It is just the reality of, and the rules are the same for every district. So let's move on from that. And Deidre, I'd be happy to talk to you about it offline if you'd like. And I think that's my last slide.
All right, thank you, Carli.
Mm-hmm.
Today we have the pleasure of hosting Jay Brown as our first presenter. He is going to talk to us about special ed determinations.
Good morning, everybody. Thank you, Dahlia. And if we can go to the next slide. Dahlia, if I could kind of depend on you as we're going, I won't be watching the chat. So if anything comes up, feel free to interrupt me with questions if I need to stop at a certain point and offer an explanation or answer a question. I'm happy to do that. So Kari's done a wonderful job of introducing the concept of talking about students with disabilities around attendance. And at my bureau, I do it all the time, but I really feel like I don't do it enough here with you folks. And I'd like to do more of it. And I'm excited about being able to be with you today and not just listening, although we have some wonderful presentations on a regular basis. But what I'd like to do is talk a little bit about laying some additional ground that Kari started for us around special ed, and then talk about what we call LEA determinations, which is basically how districts are viewed and rated with respect to a number of indicators, including chronic absence. So if we can go to the next slide, we can get started. These, and I apologize that some of these will look a little bit small, but you'll get a copy of the presentation, and you can view it at another time to really take a close look at this slide. But what I've done here is I've taken the primary disability rates and chronic absence for the last 3 months. And this is a report, by the way, just so you know, that I routinely, each month as the data comes out, I update these reports and I send them to my boss, Brian Klimpowitz, the division director for special education, to keep him on top of what's going on for students with disabilities with regard to chronic absence. I think it's really important that we understand that we don't want to be complacent with in the fact that when you look at your overall chronic absence rates in many districts, lots of times the numbers look deceptively good. And I'll call it deceptively because when overall, let's say you have an attendance rate that's in the 90s, which is fantastic. Keep that up, get it even better. But you're not looking at, let's say, of the subgroup that Carrie mentioned earlier, the subgroup of students with disabilities. And there's a number of different kinds of subgroups, but let's talk about students with disabilities today. And if you're not looking specifically at that subgroup, you might never come across the information like the slide that Carrie presented earlier, where you see students with emotional disability up in the 60% chronic absence rate, students with other health impairment approaching 50%. Those are incredibly high numbers, and you would never know it if we get complacent and only look at our overall rates. You have to dig down in your data, and all this data is available for you in EdSite. So when you look at this particular data, this is the last 3 months, December, January, and February. And you'll notice that things have stayed fairly consistent. After working on this for a number of years with Kari, you can almost predict some of these rates. You can predict what certain months are going to look like. And this is not unusual, what you're seeing on your screen right now. It's fairly consistent. That means, A, districts are doing some good work keeping their rates from going up. But it also means that a lot of our work, even though as hard as we're working, is not necessarily making great strides in bringing the rates down. So we have to keep at it. We can never let up on that. And as I think about it, relations are such a huge part of that. So when you look at this, you can see that in February, our rates did go up just a little bit, but overall, rates are fairly consistent right now over the last 3 months. And if we can have the next slide, what I'd like to take a look at is the last 4 years. So if we're looking at chronic absence rates since January 2023, and I saw something in the chat before, which spoke to wondering about pre-COVID rates versus during COVID rates, especially with our emotional disability students. I wish now I might have taken a look even farther back. At the time when I was making the slide, 4 years seemed to be plenty, but you're right. I think maybe we should look back even further. But look at this rate. So let's compare January 2023 in every disability category. And what you're going to notice is, as compared to the following years, we've made actually great progress since January 2023. That January 2023 is that left-hand column. And you'll see in each case for each primary disability, it's the highest and the greatest. Other than in TBI, which it stayed for at least the next year, it stayed fairly stable. But you'll notice that those are high rates. And then you folks started doing some great work, not started, but continued to do it and probably accelerated, and rates started to come down. So as compared to years prior, your current rates are really, really doing much better. And I have to say, and I'm sure Carli has mentioned this over to you folks over time, but you have the uncanny advantage of having real-time data. Nobody else, I don't know if there's anybody else in the country that does attendance data like Connecticut does attendance data with Carli spearheading that, where we get it the next month. You can so easily stay on top of your attendance data, at least with awareness. Because you get it so quickly. It's not delayed a year. It's not delayed months and months. So take advantage of it whenever you can. Next slide, please. Okay, so later on, we're going to talk a little bit about an indicator called child find. And this particular Connecticut regulation, this is not a federal regulation, this is a Connecticut regulation, feeds into what we call child find in special education, and I'm sure many of you are aware of. So this basically says there's no option. You have to make a referral to special education if, among other things, attendance, including truant behavior, is at an unsatisfactory level or what you would consider a marginal level of acceptance. Now, it's not defined what those two terms mean. You can determine that locally within your district. But if you have a student who you are noticing is chronically absent and you think you know the answer, but there's been no referral to special education, just understand it's not an option. You have to make a referral to special education. And in the end, if it's determined that there's no reason for that those absences based anywhere in the disability, then that's fine. Then you know. But you have to make the referral. That's part of your child find responsibilities within a district. And it's really important that you understand that, because not all districts realize that. They think, oh, I know why they're absent. It's because X, Y, or Z. That's fine, but you have to confirm it. You have to refer. Next slide, please. Okay. So now let's get down to Hari gave us a lot of interventions, a lot of wonderful things we could do for different students with disabilities. One of the more global things that happens at the state level, and it's driven by federal regulation, is that we are required, we being the Bureau of Special Education, are required to assign annual performance determinations to each school district. Now, again, that's driven by the federal government. It's driven by the Office of Special Education Programs, which is essentially my Bureau of Special Education, which is at the state level. Think of my bureau, but at the federal level, overseeing all of the bureaus of special education in each state. That's who drives these determinations and who sets the standards and makes sure that it happens. So, federal law, OSEP, requires that we make annual determinations for each school district. And basically, what we do is there are what we call state performance plans and an annual performance report. You probably have heard it called SPP APR. We refer in Connecticut. We love to use all kinds of acronyms. So we refer to it as the SPP APR, and based on that, we're able to get the data to assign one of four categories. And these four categories are developed and required by OSEP. So each school district, if you look at those four different categories, will be assigned as, after we look at the data, either you meet requirements, you are in the needs assistance category, you are in the needs intervention category, or needs substantial intervention category. So you'll see as you go from 1 to 4, the need for additional assistance, the district's need for additional assistance raises significantly, going from 1 to 4, from meets requirements where you're doing everything you need to, you're fine, all the way up to needs substantial intervention. So those are the four different categories, and we're going to talk a little bit more about those in a moment. Next slide, please. Okay, I just want to make you aware in the next 2 slides of a document that's going to explain in 2 or 3 pages everything that you and I are about to talk about on the series of slides that comes after this. I'm going to explain it in detail, but I wanted to let you know that afterwards, you have a single document that has all this information on it. That's not the slide presentation. You'll have that too. But this is a written document. And if we go to the next slide. Oh, there was one before that, I thought. Because there was a link to that. Could we back up one slide? All right, go forward one. I apologize. What I'll have to do is send it to you, but there had been, I thought, a slide which had the live link to get to this document. And I'm not seeing it right now. So I'll make sure that you get that information, but understand that this document exists. It's a great resource after we're done if you have any questions. Of course, I don't go away. I'm here. You can always reach out and contact me with questions. Okay, next slide, please.
Jay, I think there's a link on slide 20 for the resources to determination process.
Oh, that's coming later?
Yeah, if you go to slide real quick,
I apologize, but this particular slide is out of sync. It's out of order, Car. We're not ready for this slide. What comes after this slide? Okay, there's the determination process link. So we have that. Just so you know, you could go to this link at any time. It'll bring you right to the whole document that I was looking at earlier with you, just that I was referring to earlier. So let's go to the next slide, and we'll continue on talking about the different indicators. Okay, thanks. Now, I mentioned before that each LEA gets an annual performance determination, and the districts use the OSEP requires 18 different indicators that we use for districts to make their annual performance determination. And of the 18, here's the first 6. So again, these are all with respect to students with disabilities. I know this is not specifically about attendance, but you'll see why I'm talking about each of them when we get to the chronic absence piece. So the first indicator is we look at how a district is doing with respect to graduation rates for students with disabilities. Conversely, the second indicator has to do with the dropout rate for students with disabilities. So as it happens, indicators 1 and 2 are my responsibility at the Bureau, so I monitor that information. It's very interesting, just as a side note, as when we can't look exclusively at graduation and dropout rates because we have to remember that sometimes your graduation rates go down because your district is doing such a great job with transition and students are staying on another year or two. So we always pay a lot of it. So that would bring the graduation rate down, but not in a negative way because the district is keeping those students on and assisting them with transition. So we have to pay close attention to the dropout rate, showing that even though they didn't graduate, they also didn't drop out. So that's an important factor. Indicator 3 has to do with students with disabilities participation on statewide assessments. You'll notice that occasionally some of these have parenthetically letters enclosed, like here, A, B, C, D. When you look at that link for that additional document, afterwards, you'll see that indicator 3 is broken down further into 4 different pieces that we're not going to go into here because we don't need to. But if you wanted to know the 4 different pieces of what we look at for participation of students with disabilities on statewide assessments, you'd be able to see what A, B, and D means. Also, indicator 4, suspension and expulsion. Indicator 5, education environments for our littles, for our preschoolers, children, and our kindergartners. Indicator 6 also has to do with our preschool environments. And when we look at preschool environments, we're looking at whether it's just a regular preschool environment, is it a special preschool, or is it actually an in-home situation? Can we go to the next slide, please? The next set of indicators, again, indicator 7, preschool outcomes, talks about social skills, language, behaviors. Someone mentioned earlier about parent involvement when it comes to chronic absence. Indicator 8 is overall parent involvement of students with disabilities, not specifically around chronic absence, but anytime you have parent involvement in building those relationships, it's going to assist and help buoy up your attendance rates. Indicator 9, disproportionate representation of students with disabilities in the areas of racial and ethnic groups in special ed. So are more groups represented in special ed than others. So disproportionate representation. And indicator 10 is similar, but it has to do with specific disability categories. So in any one district, are there far more students in a particular disability category than others, and we look at that. It may be very accurate. It may be exactly what it should be because of that's who moved into district. However, we look at that and we pay attention to that. Indicator 11 is child find, and we talked about that earlier, where Connecticut goes a little bit further and requires a prompt referral. But from the federal level, child find is that you need to identify, locate, and evaluate all students who are suspected of having a disability. It's that simple. And Connecticut felt it needed to go a little further, and I gave you that regulation just a little bit earlier. Indicator 12 has to do with early childhood transition. So transition, how things are going between, say, the birth to 3 world into kindergarten world, or birth to 5 world now into the kindergarten world. We look at that, and if we can go to the next slide, please, we'll get the last 6 indicators. We separate early childhood transition from indicator 13, which is secondary transition. And secondary transition, as you know, has to do with our students who are 14 and above, and they're planning for life after school, after high school. And indicator 14, which is post-school outcomes, has to do with a survey that collects data on what they actually did. You know, what students who graduated from your district, what did they go on to do? And you'll see A, B, and C. There are 3 different categories that students might fit into that we collect data on. Indicator 15, in this unfortunate world of such litigiousness, indicator 15 has to do with resolution sessions, which again are part of our complaint resolution process. Indicator 16 also has to do with that, with regard to how many mediations are being held. Good things, but if there are many, it's a concern. Indicator 17 has to do with the state systemic improvement plan, which I'm sure you're all familiar with. And indicator 18 has to do with general supervision, which is the overall process by which OSEP looks at us, the Bureau, and the Bureau looks at each school district. So, all of that said, you haven't heard about chronic absence yet. So let's talk about the next slide, please.
Hi, Jay. Just as a time check,
Yes.
we just have a few more minutes before we bring on Bridgeport.
Okay, I'll really start moving here. Sorry. Okay, next slide, please. So there are of the indicator 18 indicators. There are compliance indicators and results indicators. I don't think, in the interest of time, let's go to the next slide. You can always come back and look at this if you need to. Next slide, please. Okay, so Connecticut's gone beyond the federal indicator requirements, what OSEP said we need to do. And we've added chronic absence. Now, I'm sure that's because we're always, consultants are always in the ear of our boss who said chronic absence is important with students with disabilities. Chronic absence is important with students with disabilities. He gets his monthly checks, et cetera, his monthly reports. So they've added chronic absence as one of the indicators as far as looking at annual determinations. I feel that the chronic absence target rate right now is set a little bit high. It's less than or equal to 20% of students with disabilities that'll get a district noticed for chronic absence. Over time, as rates continue to get better, that rate can come down. And understand that even though we have chronic absence rates available to us that are a month old, when we do the annual determinations, because all of the other indicators that you just saw, the 18 indicators, we can only get that data a year old. We can't get it any more recent than that. We then need to use the chronic absence data that's a year old for, the chronic absence data that's a year old. So unfortunately, there is a small time lag with respect to the data. If we can go to the next slide, please. So when we look at the data, basically we look at districts and we say you either met target, you were substantially compliant, you were making progress, you didn't meet target, or it's simply not applicable because you don't have enough students and for us to be able to publish or evaluate. So if you meet target, it's equal to or less than 20% of children with IEPs. And then it goes up from there. And that will help you understand what comes next in the determination. Next slide, please. So depending on that status, the district will be placed in one or assigned one of four categories. You either met requirements, which means everything is fine, you did everything that needed to be done in each category. You might be placed in needs assistance one, means one or two of the indicators that we talked about didn't meet the target. And there's some enforcement actions that go along with that. The district's put on notice, etc. You might be put on needs assistance two, which again means one or two indicators didn't meet target, and at least one was the same that you didn't meet target for the previous year. So the enforcement actions are upped a little bit. And you can see here that you advise the districts of available resources and or identify the district as a high-risk grantee. How are we doing on time? We're pretty close now?
Yeah, that's it. It's Bridgeport now.
Okay.
Can we maybe share any important resources within the slides?
Well, what I want to do is refer everybody to the link for that whole document because it has everything we didn't cover, everything we covered plus everything we didn't cover on that document. And then I'd like to encourage anybody that has any questions about it to reach out to me. I'm more than happy to answer questions and assist in any way I can. And
Great.
I'm so happy that Bridgeport is, because I know how hard Bridgeport is working with us on this. So I'm so happy that they're here.
Yeah, thank you, Jay. We'll welcome Carli from Bridgeport and her team.
Thank you so much. I think we're slide 32 starting. Thank you. So I'm going to give it right over to the stars of the show here. So I'm going to take no time. Just wanting to introduce ourselves. We're here from Bridgeport. Kenneth Kudowski is here, the principal of Bridgeport Learning Center, and Harry Bell, our LEAP home visitor. And we are here to talk about how we used our corrective action plan, which was facing an obstacle, but how we turned it into an opportunity, and how we learned from our LEAP home visiting, and how we could pivot and use that same framework and model to support our special education program at the Bridgeport Learning Center. So I'm going to pass it to Ken on the next slide, and he can talk just a little bit about his school and his program and the collaboration with a LEAP home visitor.
Good morning, everyone. I'm Kenneth. I am the principal of BLC. BLC is our highest level of support in district. It's a therapeutic setting, and our core profiles are dealing with students with high intense social, emotional, and behavioral challenges. This is the highest LRE, least restrictive environment, that we offer within district to support some of our most vulnerable students. Most of our experiences with students that we have at BLC that do experience some high chronic absenteeism, a lot of our students do have a profile of school refusal behaviors. So there are large gaps of time where there's high absenteeism. And there's also hospitalizations that are paired with some of our student profiles too, due to their mental health stabilization and support. And also some of our kiddos are involved with the juvenile justice system. So there are, another portions of absence of time that they do unfortunately miss instruction. So we've been really being high working with our support with Mr. Bell, and I'll turn it over to him in a moment in regards to our high collaboration with his support and really reintegrating our students back into BLC and really having a higher level of consistency with attendance. Mr. Bell?
We can't hear you.
Mr. Bell, I think your microphone may be. Microphone is off, but. Yeah, I think we're good now, Mr. Bell.
You can hear me?
Yes.
Yeah,
You can
we're
hear
good.
me?
Perfect.
So sorry, guys. My name is Mr. Bell. I've been in the Bridgeport school district for almost 11 years. I was placed enrolled as a security guard, like I said, for the prior 11 years. I run a nonprofit called Color of Positive Thought that's been going on within the city for almost 17 years that deals with social and emotional learning. I started off with a coloring book, and I just was graduated into the lead coordinator about 4 months ago. And I just want to say it's been very grateful to, have the support from, first of all, Carli and her team, and our principal, Mr. G. Ken. He's been very supportive of letting me be able to go out there and basically do what I already do and have a open door to the support that he has given us through the school system and Carli. So, I think as I've been in for the past 4 months and the numbers did go up, it was a lot of help due to the free will of Mr. Ken and Cardi letting me be able to meet our families where they are. I'm from Bridgeport. A lot of the kids that's on my caseload, at one point when I was younger, I was one of them. So I know the struggles, and I think that me being able to understand a situation and helping them get resources that make them feel great to be able to integrate back into school has been very supportive. And Carli has been very open to me to, letting my wings go and being able to nurture the situation as getting our kids back integrated into school with the help of Ken. So I think my community background base uh, literally is like a thumbs up to getting these kids integrated back into school due to my 17 years of on the ground service to our city.
Thank you, Harry. And I have to say that, one thing that we have found really helpful is the consistent communication between Mr. Bell, between Mr. Grodowski. They keep us up to date on every student, what they're learning from the students and the families. They're bringing the information back to the school. And then as a district, we can strategize as to best help that student. And Harry has had some, and I love being on every communication because I get to read the success stories as they come through in real time. And Harry has had some really great success stories. And Harry, if you just want to, can you just give us one quick success story, a student that you've been working with, a challenge that they faced, and how you were able to get that student reintegrated into the school community? Oh, you're muted.
Can you hear me now?
Yes, you're good.
Yeah, so there was a case that we had at our school with a student, and the student had very high absentee rate. So, Mr. Ken, like I said, and Carli gave me free will to hit this head on that feel comfortable on how I go by doing things. So one thing about me, like I said, I'm boots on the ground person. I'm very community orientated. So I go by that old saying, a village, it takes a village. And Bridgeport education school system has been the village that's helping our kids grow. So, I did some research on the kid regarding, Facebook, see who's connected with him that I know through Facebook. Do I know his family? Have this kid ever been to one of my programs that, I partner within the city with, and things to that nature. So I come to find out, you know, I seen a kid in a few of my prior engagement events at some of my uh school and community events. So I kind of had a bridge already. So when I went to that kid home and they looked at me at the door, it was like so welcoming. It was so welcoming to the point like I was family. So I was able to get this kid back integrated into school. Prior before I got here, like Carli said, I try to do open communication. Like you go the an hour before I got on this Zoom, I got a call from a parent saying, "Is it possible? Can you help get my kid to school because I'm having troubles with him. I'm trying to get him up." And what I realized that, the parents are trying their best to get these kids to go to school. It's the student got in mind that they don't want to go to school. So what we're trying to do with Carli and Ken is trying to figure out more resources that make the student feel comfortable coming back to school. So, like I said, I start work at 8 o'clock. I get calls at 7:30. Can you come to the house and just help my kid get on a bus? And I'm in constant communication like that. That make it successful for this kid going to integrating back into school. Like Ken said prior, that we got a lot of kids that probably in detention centers and things of that nature. I have communication with the detention officers. I'm actually going to visit a kid that was prior in our school that got detained. I stay in communication, and I'm just honored to, Ken and Carli to let me be able to do it the way I believe that I can get it done with no strings attached.
Thank you so much, Harry. Thank you so much, Mr. Grodowski, for joining us. And this is all you. This is all the work that you've been doing, and we see the success and just really appreciative. And thank you for allowing us to have this platform to share our story too.
Yes, thank you.
I met Mr. Gradowski and Mr. Bell at the Bridgeport district attendance team, and it just was so real and so community focused and family focused. I was just so impressed with what was happening. The first thing I said is we have to get these two on our talk Tuesday, and this just turned out to be a perfect one because as part of their plan for special ed and to get off the list, I guess, right, is hiring Mr. Bell to strengthen family engagement, help kids feel more of a sense of belonging, and they were able to do this in collaboration with their special ed department. And so that's really important, this braiding of funds and resources to support our families and students and using your community gems. I'm going to call him a gem because they can really make our families feel welcome and our students, build that trust with people at the school district. Mr. Bell, I have a question. I know we're getting late, but one question. Do you meet the students when they transition back to school? Like if they've been out or Mr. Ken, is there a plan for students who have been hospitalized or maybe incarcerated for a little bit, come back to school?
Yes. Excuse me. We work on a reintegration plan. So we work and meet with the parent and the student with the staff members prior to to them coming back just to get a little bit historical, anything that may be going on prior to them leaving campus to reintegrate back, knowing any of their strengths or weaknesses and seeing where they are at, in that place to slowly reintegrate them back into the school.
Mm-hmm. Thank you. That's really important.
Can literally give me an open door to start a rapport with not just the kid, but with the parents and within the service providers that the kid already getting service. So we it's like we already have a head start because we are so locked in and joining hand in hand with all service providers, community, parents, the kid, and so we are able to see the scope from all angles and make it successfully.
Wonderful. Thank you.
All right. Thank you to our team from Bridgeport. I do not see any questions in the chat. And I do believe that there are there's contact information if you would like to connect. If we could advance just to the next slide, please, Dan. And the next one. All right, I just wanted to pull our attention to our next Talk Tuesday. It is going to be an awesome session with Dr. Brandy Simonson from the University of Connecticut. We hope to see you all there, and thank you all for joining today.